TikTok, it's time to rock. Welcome to the channel, folks. Welcome to the Rolling Stones shows we've been doing on the channel, and it's been my pleasure midweek for a few weeks now hosting our dear friend Carl, also known as Stewed and Keith.
Yeah.
How are you, brother?
Oh, good. Yeah. Hey, here we are, week 6 of highlighting each individual member of the greatest rock and roll band in the world, closing out with Sir Keith Richards.
Sir Keith Richards. I don't know about that, but in our minds, anyway, in your mind and my mind, he's up there with rock and roll royalty. So I'm going to call him King Keith.
Yeah, no knighthood for Keith.
No knighthood. No. Speaking about that, it was a little bit funny too. Remember when Keith got knighted and he made some comments in the press about it, about how he thought it was a little bit strange.
Mick got knighted.
Yeah, when Mick got knighted.
Well, Pete said he's going against everything we fought for. Yeah.
But mate, Mick always wanted that though. Mick was always a little bit bourgeois, a little bit petty bourgeois.
Well, it shows you how out of touch Queen is, and I'm not talking about Freddie Mercury. You remember the Queen shook Eric, Jimmy Page, and Jeff Beck's hand?
Yes.
She said, "Who are you, and what do you do?" "Oh, I play guitar." "Who for?" "The Led Zeppelin." But Eric Clapton, he handled the whole thing well. He was just polite. You've seen that, eh?
Yeah.
I tell you,
those English boys are polite, bro.
Yeah, I tell you, there's quite a few of them. Is it Rod Stewart, Elton John, or all sirs or knights, aren't they? Or
yeah, yes, David Beckham.
Yes, recently Paul McCartney.
Sir Paul, yeah.
So yeah, it must be an honour. I mean, obviously, it's how could you say no? I'd probably go up there.
I would.
Yeah. I mean, what do you got to lose?
Well, look at it this way, you know, and we're kind of detracting from the topic of the show, but it's an interesting point. You know, if you got an award like that, it would be recognising the generations of people in your family that came before you, that gave you a position to take advantage of this award in the first place, you know, through the generations of hard work and effort, and also, you know, leaving a foundation for generations of people in your own family to come afterwards.
Yep. No, good point. You're remembering your family roots and being an inspiration to complete strangers.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. But yeah, Keith Richards, I was thinking about him today. He's almost the last man standing. What a survivor.
When you consider the life that he's had in particular over the years, you know, his drug habit, alcohol, smoking, you know, he was, what was he, like a 2-pack a day smoker or something like that? You know, he was it's literally amazing that the guy has lasted this long, don't you think?
Well, yeah. I mean, every picture I see him in for the last 50 years, there's always a cigarette or something going on. So Yeah, yeah, he described himself as a chimney to the American press when one of a famous person or a star had some sort of cancer, and they said, "How are you still going, Keith?" And he says, "My constitution." But,
Well, yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's all credit to Keith. That he's been around this long and still, like we said last week when we were talking about Mick. They're in the studios recording right now as we speak. So
yeah,
I'm just going to do a bit of a shout out, Carl. We've got some good friends of ours in the chat. We've got in the chat, chat, in the chat. Sonia's here, Mission RD100. Good to see you, brother. Helene O'Hara, a very dear friend of the show. Arvin Gaunt, another dear friend in the chat, and also from Canada, Gretch Steplin. So thanks, guys. Thank you for being on and hanging out with us. And Sunhouse left us a super chat of 349. So thank you, Sunhouse, for doing that. But look, I've been looking forward to this show, talking about Keith Richards in particular, because Carl, in my opinion, Keith Richards is one of the greatest guitar players in the world, songwriters, and I know he gets a lot of grief from people, kind of, and I appreciate people having opinions, because opinions are fine and valid. That's that's all good. But I could never understand this opinion when people say that he's overrated. That kind of grates me, because, why would he be overrated?
well, I imagine those people are probably people that like Rush or Led Zeppelin or more technical bands where the maybe even Grateful Dead, where there's a lot of I mean, what's that famous saying? A jazz concert has 100 chords, 2 guitars, and 3 people in the audience. Where Keith Richards has a packed out stadium, 80,000, 3 chords, 2 fingers, and 1 a-hole.
So great. It's a famous quote. Yeah.
So whatever he's doing is working. So he doesn't like being in guitar playing competitions. He says I haven't even actually filled out the paperwork. Why are you putting me in here? No one sent me an application. He's happy being just a riff meister, a rhythm player. So I thought I would divide up Keith Richards. I've got 3 segments.
Yep.
62 to 67, that great period 68 to 72, then I'll put 73 to 82, but we can just put 73 to whenever.
Yeah, sure. Okay, yeah. What do you got?
Well, these 3 periods just identify his evolution as a musician, from playing covers to finding his signature sound, to honing that sound, to being a reference point for rock and roll, as we know.
Sure.
So it didn't happen overnight. And maybe there's some people in the audience would love to hear his story, as far as a pimply 19-year-old to a 25-year-old worldwide rock star to 50 albums.
Yeah. Sure.
Because a lot of enthusiasm, but they were just like every other garage band at the start, and they were playing covers, and it took him a while to find his own sound. But that's what you do.
Yeah.
So I'd just like to pinpoint. So obviously we spoke about Mick and as being a great frontman, but the Keith Richards drew from that great well of mainly American musicians. We know his relationship with Chuck Berry. That's his main guy. He's a big Muddy Waters fan. Him and Brian Jones did the interweaving with the Jimmy Reed style guitar. Bo Diddley naturally. So that was all over the first 2 albums, that stuff. So we got to see Keith not singing at this stage and not really writing music, but playing a pretty good Chuck Berry style guitar.
Sure.
And having, I was listening just a few songs today just to give me an idea of what to talk about, a few notes. And from day one, he had a very nice tone.
Yes.
So he obviously cared about the sound he was creating, and he was, for being a shy guy and quite in the background initially, he had a really great sound.
Yeah, I think that goes down to the fact too that obviously, we've discussed this a few times. He was a student of listening to that Chicago blues sound, and he understood that these guys were recording with relatively simple instruments. And he understood, though, the combination. I think, I can't prove it. I've got some, articles, and it's been mentioned in some books, hinted at over the years. But he understood the combination really, really early, I think, of a good guitar and a amplifier, and that combination. And I'm just going to pinpoint something here, if you give me a second. Media assets. So if I go, so he was playing, as an example. To what Carl's talking about, he was playing, hollow-bodied Epiphone casinos long before the before the Beatles. So he was playing this guitar 2 years before the Beatles discovered and made the casino famous. And one of the reasons why the casino's really, really good is because it's completely hollow, and it's got a nice warm sound, with those P90 pickups going through those Vox amps. So it was a perfect combination to get that warm sound, Carl.
Yeah, and like all of us, he would have been trying really hard to honor his idols with the sound that he heard and he liked, and probably that choice of guitar, maybe a bit of homage to Chuck Berry.
Correct.
Yeah, Gibson style of guitars. You mentioned the F-hole, just to get that. And I forgot to mention also, even though I didn't hear it much in his playing, but he was a huge Scotty Moore fan as well. He loved those Sun records. So those guys, and that's why I love that early Brian Jones, Keith Richards stuff. They were doing lots of covers, but for 19, 20-year-olds, they had a nice sound and a good rhythm down early on. Because can you imagine in London, there would have been 500 bands just like them, so it would have been quite competitive.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. So, I mean, when Keith Richards calls you up to do a 60th birthday and Muddy Waters invites you to Chess Studios when you're 21, and Otis Redding covers Otis Satisfaction, and James Brown sort of lifting an eyelid, you must be doing something right.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree.
So, yeah. And the other thing that shaped his guitar sound, and Brian was involved with this, was obviously we heard about the blues influences, but the classic American R&B songbook, which you see in the third and fourth albums, the Drifters, Solomon Burke, Marvin Gaye, Irma Thomas, and Sam Cooke. And Jimi Hendrix did the same thing when he was starting out. He got a lot of his rhythm style from that R&B sound. People don't know that he played on Don Covay records and not Curtis Mayfield, the other guy, I forgot it, but it'll come to me. But yeah, so that was important in honing their sound as well. When they touched down in America in '64 for the first time, the first thing they did in New York was go to the Apollo Theatre.
Correct.
So they talk about that in the 25 by 5 documentary, to see Smokey Robinson. They were gobsmacked. They were just stripped down band, lots of emotion. Mick Jagger would have been copying all their dance moves, and these guys would have been gear watchers. So
I think we should remind folks too that they kind of freaked people out too, the Rolling Stones, when they went to the Apollo Theatre, these white guys from the UK, because, it wasn't a common occurrence for, white guys to be doing that. So, it kind of freaked a few people out.
Mainly black audience.
Yeah.
A bit like Paul Butterfield and and Michael Bloomfield in the south side of Chicago. And the black guys said, these kids are cool, don't mess with them. So,
Yeah, and these guys from the UK though had no idea. As far as they were concerned, they just wanted to go and see a music act, a gig, didn't they?
Well, they probably were a little bit naive with segregation and stuff. Yeah. But Stones actually helped integrate people with their music, because all of a sudden you had, and we'll go through this in my next little segment, is we might as well talk about it. Their breakout song. So after the first two albums, with all the excitement and Andrew Loog Oldham putting a little bit of pressure on them, saying, hey, you could only play covers for so many years and it's going to wear thin soon. But the ball started to roll with The Last Time. Here we have a reworking of the Staples Singers song, a gospel song, and they stepped up the tempo a little bit and changed a few of the lyrics around, and all of a sudden we've got almost a #1 hit.
Sure.
And Keith described it as finally having the confidence to give to the rest of the guys something that we are proud of, and sure enough, it was a hit. So, but you're right. Seeing Smokey Robinson at Polo, all those various, the Chitlin circuit, the R&B scene, that would have probably given me influence to write something like The Last Time, because that a combination of having people dance and a sort of a swing to it and keeping it simple all at the same time, it all equates to just having the right feel.
It also gave them an idea of stage presence too, I'm going to argue, because while they may have been raving a little bit when they were in the UK, you look at the Tammy Show as an example and see what Mick Jagger is doing, imitate, doing his funk kind of rhythms and stuff, with dancing. But more interesting, look at Keith Richard and see what Keith Richard is doing, because in the past, up until then, he was just kind of standing back, but you actually see him on that Tammy gig, he's moving around, he's shaking, he's obviously been influenced by these African Black American, acts that they've been seeing just like yesterday. I'm going to argue.
Yeah, I mean, watching the You Better Move On and the big guitar and sort of Bill Wyman's up there and Keith's a little bit up there too, and a little bit stiff and awkward. With those new Fender amps and the crowd's getting a bit bigger, and it's all about confidence. They start to move around a bit. You're exactly right. Brian Jones always had a bit of a smooth style, but Keith started to, make himself known, have a bit more presence. So it's all about excitement. They just Mick Jagger talks about it a lot. In a lot of these bands, they soak up the crowd's energy and they give the energy back, and it must be a surreal feeling. So, yeah, that Tammy Show is a real highlight of just how good they were. That took a lot of BALLS to close out the show with all those hot American acts and live TV and all sorts. No room for error. No room for error. And if you have a look at the gear that they just had their guitars plugged straight into the amps, Carl. No pedal boards, no effects. It was just true guitar. I got to say,
and fingers.
Mick Jagger, he pulled it off too. I mean, it's not James Brown, but it's a pretty good watered down version. Yeah. Yeah. If for anyone that wants to get into early R&B music, I have the DVD and I highly recommend it. The whole Tammy Show is worth watching. It's got Beach Boys. It's got a few English acts. It's got, it's 2.5 hours of pretty good music.
Yeah, I've got the DVD too. I think it's incredible, and the one that I've got actually shows the ads in between the breaks. So it's almost as if you're looking at this time capsule. James Brown, Sporty and Arvin are making a comment. they're saying that they must have been intimidated after going after James Brown. I don't know if they would have been intimidated. Certainly inspired.
Mm. Well, when the pressure's on like that, there's only one thing you can do, and that's turn the switch on and go. Maybe, yeah. With all that energy and James Brown being a really tough band leader, and if you get fined $10 if you miss a beat, it would have probably ramped up their performance. Because James Brown, I was thinking about James Brown the other day. That's the blueprint for your Michael Jacksons, Chris Brown. He's the guy.
Prince.
I forgot about Prince. Yes. So all that stuff. And then obviously we heard about the last time, and then turns out Mick and Keith knew what they were doing as far as childhood friends and knowing how to write songs, and Satisfaction followed and Get Off My Cloud. So, in a short amount of time, they were rocking and rolling. So they did 2 albums. They did the first album, which was mainly covers. Second album, a few more covers and a few more original songs, but nothing standing out, just blues covers really. But by the time the third album came out of our heads, they were destined for big time.
Oh yeah, and then Aftermath, 100%. Look, I've asked you this question before, but I have to ask it again, just in case other people might be watching this stream who aren't aware of it. Carl said something really interesting, folks, about how Andrew was one of the reasons why, certainly put the pressure on Mick and Keith getting together to write some songs, because this was important for the band. Do you think Mick and Keith would have got together to write songs anyway without Andrew putting that pressure on? Do you think it was something that they were thinking about anyway?
I think with Mick's competitive drive and the fact that he liked to be the front, and I put down here, every time you see Keith in those old early shots, especially photos and a little bit of live footage, he's always got an acoustic guitar in his hand. So I think that they were just destined to be songwriters, but probably without the pressure of Andrew, probably 6 months later. So I imagine fame's probably quite addictive. So you want to keep the train going, Andrew, like Epstein, I'm not talking about the Files, I'm talking about the Beatles guy. He probably had they had visions. They saw the future, So,
yeah, I agree, and you and I have had this conversation a few times. So I think they were going to write songs, and I think they were thinking about it when they saw Paul McCartney and John Lennon write a song in 5 minutes, and they realized, my gosh, this is basically how to do it. Yeah, I agree. And this is one of the great things, though, about management, because, there's lots of examples where managers are ripping off and being negative and also being handbrakes towards their acts. Andrew putting pressure on them to say, hey, Keith, get out there and write some songs, was exactly what Keith Richard needed. Exactly.
Yeah.
Because that's what got him out of the shell, Carl.
Well, not only that, but it improved his guitar playing, because we talked about his influences of Chuck Berry and Scotty Moore, but he became a really good acoustic guitar player.
Oh,
and
yeah.
That molded a lot of their songs. So that and one of the people in the audience mentioned about their country influence. So I'll just put a few songs here to highlight Keith's acoustic guitar playing, and them trying to do that Beatles singer-songwriter, Play with Fire and As Tears Go By. Sort of an introduction into Keith and acoustic and writing some serious songs, But we started to see, and Mick always said this, that Keith always had a bit of country in him.
Sure.
the country element with the acoustic. There's a song on Aftermath called High and Dry,
Yes.
and a song called Sitting on a Fence, which is a great song that just sort of never made an album, but it made it onto a compilation called Flowers.
Yes.
And you can see that sort of country, Appalachian mountain influence, and that comes about by lots of midnight sessions, maybe some whiskey and acoustic, and we saw it with Graham Parsons with Exile. You know, all it takes is a mistake with the chord, and it turns out to be a good mistake because that chord starts. I mean, look at the beginning of Waiting on a Friend. It's just instantly recognizable. And that's sort of just a country chord it's playing. So
It's supposed to be a C chord, yeah.
Yeah, C at 9. So it was inevitable then to start playing and writing songs. It was just Andrew put the heat on them, which he did a great job, and that's his job as a band manager. He's the eyes and ears. He's talking to record companies, and he's an ambitious publicist, and he's watching American charts and keeping a track on genres and the scene. And that's one great thing about the Stones and the Beatles is they not only they didn't really create the scene, but they were at the front of the scene. So yeah, they moved with the times. I love those first two albums. There's a lot of really great bluesy R&B guitar playing, but then we start to see Keith starting to mold himself as not a singer yet, but a singer-songwriter and acoustic guitar player. And it must have been magic for him and Mick because it was almost telepathic. They don't even need to talk; they just hum, and stuff happens.
Yeah.
You know, and the rest of the band said, "Hey, that's great. I mean, this music's good." There's obviously a few poppy singles in there, which I'm not a fan of, but a lot of great deep cuts and enough good hits to keep the momentum going.
Yeah, 100%.
So, and so we obviously see the country element, and then we just with Between the Buttons, we really see how good his guitar playing, his acoustic is, because Between the Buttons had Chuck Berry style riffs, electric guitar. He did most of the guitar apparently, but Backstreet Girl, incredible, absolutely incredible.
Good call.
Yeah, and Who's Been Sleeping Here? Just a nice, lazy rhythm, Bob Dylan style singing and lyrics, and Bob Dylan being a big influence as well. So, I mean, how many guitar-based songs and albums can you do? You got to mix it up. A bit of acoustic, a bit of slide. Maybe just the one guitar, maybe no solo. That's what was the great thing about the Stones is they kept you guessing.
Well, and we certainly get that recipe later on in the late 60s, on Beggar's Banquet and Let It Be, don't we? We get exactly what Carl's described. I don't want to jump ahead because I know that you haven't finished that middle period, but they understood very clearly early on the idea of having contrast, and that's something that we talk a lot about here on the channel, and it's something that I've understood doing these weekly ranking the track shows, Carl, of how important contrast is between different songs on an album. It's important. It's the secret juice, bro.
Yeah. I remember my uncle would always mention he'd use the words. It's got a great flow of tracks. Like Stevie Ray Vaughan, for example, great guitar player and everything, but some of the songs sounded the same because they were in the key of E and they followed E. And
sure.
That's not his fault, and it's still great albums. But when you listen to Mick DeVille, especially the first two albums, fast song, slow song, fast song, slow song, and that's Jack Nietzsche and Doc Pumis and a lot of these New York cats having an influence, in the studio.
Yes.
So that's really important because the Stones, Keith made a point from day one that they were going to make great songs, but they were going to make even better albums. because up to that point, especially in America, you had one hot song, a couple of instrumentals, and the rest filler.
Yeah, well, that's right. You know, this idea, and that's a very, very good point, folks. We've got to remember that for a long period there in the history of rock and roll, the album wasn't much, really. It was the single, you know, that was, you know, this idea of buying an album with 8 or 10 songs being fantastic songs was just completely strange, Carl.
Yeah. If you're lucky to get an EP, like when you mentioned when Keith and Mick met at the railway station, I have those albums, but those albums are a collection of singles: Best of Muddy Waters, Best of Little Walter.
100%.
And when the Stones and Beatles were just blowing people's minds and opening eyes, all these other, even the Blues guys started to make proper albums. So maybe Bob Dylan was influential in that. Probably, yeah. He was like, screw the record companies, screw the catchy single. I'm going to make songs with substance on albums, and then all of a sudden you had what's called concept albums.
So you've raised a very, very good point, because I'm not going to pretend to be a Dylan scholar at all, but I did go and see the Bob Dylan film that came out last year, and I urge people to go and see it. And I read a couple of things after that because I was completely inspired by him. And you're right, Bob Dylan, because he was part of that folk movement, and who was the guy, the banjo player, you know the guy, Pete Seeger. Yeah. So it was what used to have conversations with him by saying, use the album. You know, the album is going to be a good vehicle for you to tell stories about what's happening in America and about American lives. So yeah, you're right, Carl. He understood the album. Good point.
Like a book of poetry. Yeah, start to finish.
It's a masterpiece, Darwin, Prodigal Son. It's a masterpiece, and we'll be talking about that soon.
Yeah. Well, we're almost at that middle section, because the last thing I want to touch on was some reporter had talked to Keith Richards about Salt of the Earth, saying, "Oh, congratulations on your first time singing on a song." He goes, excuse me, I had a verse on Something Happened to Me Yesterday. So that was the first time that Keith had, a presence on a song with, not lead vocals, but a whole verse, Prior to that, it was just background, stuff, But,
sure.
But yes, that's 68 to 72, the middle period. Now we have Keith now going from freshman to sophomore, signature sound, open tunings, going back to the blues, but not the Chicago blues of the Muddy Waters, but the pre-war, not the post-war, pre-war. Your Blind Willie Johnson, Son House, your Skip James, your Blind Willie McTowell. Obviously, we'll talk about the prodigal son, the Reverend Robert Wilkins. This is when it starts to get really good. Really good. Ry Cooder obviously was extremely helpful and instrumental, and unfortunately he doesn't mention it, but Bill Wyman mentions it, and various people. Brian Jones's contribution to slide and alternative tunings, and 12-string guitar. Brian Jones was playing 12-string on a song, which I forgot to mention. For the people out there, A Deep Cut, Blue Turns to Grey.
Wow.
That's an amazing song. But that's Brian Jones on 12-string electric, but just shows you how Mick and Keith were writing some great songs. And that's a song that's not even on a compilation. So, but yeah, and everybody knows, and the rest is history. Beggar's Banquet, Back to the Roots, Street Fighting Man, Stray Cat Blues, Jumping Jack Flash, Honky Tonk Woman, Brown Sugar, Tumbling Dice, Cut Your Heavy Knocking. Just that's the raw, unfiltered, That's when people started to call Keith the riff master. You know, Keith started to get known as the guy that made these riffs. You know, I imagine Malcolm Young was hugely influenced by that. You know, you can have a great song and catchy lyrics, but it's nothing without a riff or the engine room.
Well, for me, that's where a song becomes a song. You know, no disrespect to great guitar, you know, lead guitar players playing a solo, you know, during a song. We all love that. You know, I'm a Mick Taylor fan, for God's sake. You know, I love Eric Clapton, but at the end of the day, you know, it's the riff.
Yeah.
And the lyrics that are going to sell the song.
I'm a rhythm man, and I'm glad I can't play lead guitar that well, because I prefer rhythm, and I can see how it's so important. When I was in Austin, Texas, and going up and down 6th Street, there was 40 blues clubs, and hey, these guitar players were great. They played lead really well, but there wasn't much rhythm or swing. And I saw more swing and rhythm in churches.
Wow.
So that's where Jerry Lee Lewis and Johnny Cash and Elvis Presley, they got all that stuff from churches. So it's all about the rhythm. The fact that got Mick Taylor in to put the icing on the cake is a masterstroke. But and I mentioned here, Keith's knack is he knows how to frame the song. Very foundational, you know, whether it be 3 chords and then they drop 1 chord or add a chord, and all of a sudden it all clicks, you know. It would have started out in a hotel room with acoustic guitar and a couple of chords that sounded really nice, or some lyrics on a napkin, or a menu from a restaurant on the back side.
Yeah. Or them going away on holidays, you know, going to Brazil or going to Peru or something, you know, that was always an occasion for them to get together away from their normal environment, and you know, they got down to business. They realized, you know, they were on holiday, on vacation, but look, we're also here to write songs, Carl, you know, and they come back with, as an example, Brown Sugar and Honky Tonk Woman.
Was that when they were in South America?
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. With that Ned Kelly movie and Brian Jones and Mick Taylor, they managed to fit in a lot of stuff in a short amount of time. Yeah. You're exactly right, because you get writer's block. Poets get it, actors get it, screenwriters get it. Obviously, songwriters get it. You got to get out of your. I was talking to this lady about it today. You got to get a lot of noise out of your head. Start fresh.
Sure.
You know, it's about being inspired.
Sure.
So, and so we've obviously talked about the big crunchy riffs and the stuff we love, and you mentioned about these producers and engineers being clever to have the flow of the songs. The country element, Dear Doctor, Country Honk, the acoustic version of Honky Tonk Woman, Factory Girl, and Let It Bleed. You know, just simple chords, but Keith just gets a lot of mileage out of a plain D chord.
Exactly. You know, when he does that C chord and he and that middle finger, and he lifts the middle finger off, you know, and the D, you know, and he lifts his index finger off the D. When he does the G, you know, it's just lifting that finger off, hammering on. It's so good. It's so simple. It almost scares you to think that this is just so simple.
I was playing today, Slave, which is on the Tattoo U. It's just B and E. It's the same chords they've used for hundreds of other songs, but it just works. And here we have Jimmy Page, but just different music.
Oh yeah. Well, you're right.
Chalk and cheese. So that's what I like about Keith. Obviously, I like the underdogs, and I feel sorry for Brian, but Keith really brought a lot to the table. I mean, master songwriter, master guitar player. He didn't need to play great solos because he provided the foundation. He's the sponge cake, and then Mick Taylor put the icing on the sponge. You know, that's all you need.
Yeah, and in his own kind of way, very humble as well. You know, Keith Richard. You know, very humble. Was asked many times by reporters and journalists to be a spokesman for a generation and stuff like that. You know, and it was always kind of, the Rolling Stones came first before any political agenda or any program. You know, it was the Rolling Stones, Carl, and that was his baby.
Yeah, and I imagine he probably was quite humble because he realised that he owes himself a lot to other people. And what we know now with copyrights and suing is that he was clever enough to realise that, hey, I know I'm pretty good deep down. We're writing some great songs, but I owe it to my heroes. So it's all just like one big family. And he helped out the careers of Muddy Waters and Buddy Guy. I mean, blues came back alive in the mid-'60s. They were playing on college campuses, Hound Dog Taylor and Muddy Waters, and it was a revival. And then you had the Newport Blues and Folk Festival, and it was hip again. And Jimi Hendrix doing this Muddy Waters on acid. And it was a great time to be alive.
And they never hid their influences too, folks. You know, we'll mention this many, many times on the channel in the past, and we'll mention it moving forward. You know, the Rolling Stones, right from the word go, said, and there's many examples here in this wonderful biography, Life, where Keith tells people, to go and listen to Muddy Waters, go and listen to Robert Johnson.
Absolutely. I forgot to mention while I was going through all those tracks, obviously, Prodigal Son on Beggars Banquet. That song, just like Love in Vain with Robert Johnson, all of a sudden Reverend Robert Wilkins got an album reissued based on the strength of that cover.
And so what a cover.
Oh, unbelievable. For Keith to get that sound on that, what do they call the American National guitar? Is it?
As resonator. It was the Julian, yes.
Yeah, with the slide and the he got that sound down pretty good. And at Get Ya's out was just him and Mick. Was it just the two of them?
Correct.
There's no bass or drums. That's not easy to do.
It's one of my favourite music clips ever in history is watching Keith and Mick in '69 play those acoustic resonator songs. Yeah. I just think it's just incredible piece of music, and I'm so glad we had the video footage of it, Carl.
Yes. Well, it was great because the '69, as we spoke about, was the PA's more mature audience. The music was less frantic. It was more involved. People were listening. And Keith and Mick, just clever guys, getting a resurgence going with these old blues guys. And, Ike Turner's sniffing around, and Otis Redding's doing Satisfaction. And, it's just the Beatles and the Stones, man, they were up there, man.
So what did Ike Turner say to Keith Richards in the dressing room? Show me that open G shit, motherfucker, or something like that, didn't he? Yeah.
Because even Ike, that's what we mentioned this before. Great band, but you can only play so much 12-bar blues. And I think the Stones realised that. Once Keith discovered that open tuning and I've forgotten the guy's name, but there's a great interview where he's in New York, and his guy's got some gaps in his teeth, and Keith takes that string off that acoustic, and with the pliers, and that guy's a good questions, and he tunes Open G right in front of you, which is hard to do.
Yes.
But Keith just mentioned in a roundabout way in his pirate persona that it just opened him up to another world.
Well, I'm going to sort of back him up there, because I never forget when I started playing Open G and set, you know, and specifically 5-string Open G myself, and realized it's a completely different way of playing the guitar for obvious reasons. It actually it slows you down, you know, so where you have to sort of play behind the beat. You know, one of the first songs I ever learnt to play was Tumbling Dice on Open G, capoed at the 4th fret. And I remember people saying, when I was talking to people about it, they said, well, you picked one of the hardest songs to learn, you know. And but the point is, playing an Open G, it's just a different mindset. So I can understand why Keith was so blown away by having discovered that, and realizing not just the tunings though, Carl, and what that gave to him as a songwriter, and having to write songs with those Open G chords, but also the tonality, the tone of that Open G going through, you know, his Telecaster into amps, just gave them a different sound too, bro.
I mean, I think the most signature of all the sounds, because obviously there's some country picking with Honky Tonk Woman, I guess to a lesser extent Jumping Jack Flash, but I think the key song would have to be Brown Sugar as a definitive opening 12 bars or 18 bars of just straight rhythm in that open tuning, and instantly recognizable, a monster song. I mean,
that was the second song I learnt to play, and one of my favorite Open G songs ever to play. I love it. I adore playing it. It's just, and you can't play it in standard tuning. It's impossible, in my opinion.
I've seen people figure out different chord patterns. It's not quite the same. Their fingers have to stretch so far to get the similar sound. And here's a good here's a shout out to, because obviously Keith couldn't do the open tuning for every song and start sounding the same, so they mixed up standard tuning with open. But the Black Crowes are probably the greatest band to emulate that sort of sound, I think.
100%. We've been privileged on the channel to rank a couple of their albums, and you know, I agree. You know, there's a conversation that they were influenced heavily by the Faces. I get that, but I'm still going to go on the record and say that Rich Robertson, the guitar player, stole, in a nice way, off Keith Richards. Keith was his blueprint. And then you had Ronnie from the Faces on the edges, but definitely. One interesting thing about Rich Robertson too, because can you just give me a second? I'll grab a Telecaster and just show folks something.
Yeah.
So here's my tribute Keith Richards Keith caster. So notice that's got 5 strings. It's a permanently set up Open G. Rich Robertson had it set up in Open G, but he keeps the bottom E on, so he's got 6 strings. He doesn't play 5.
Is that the thick E or the thin E?
The thick E.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, Twice as Hard and
Jealous Again.
Jealous Again was on the tip of my tongue.
Oh.
Yeah. So, yeah, I remember watching a DVD when the Black Crowes first came out, and you knew these guys, though, at Glass and Glazers, Bruce Todd.
Yes.
What was that place on Hague Street? Glass and Glazing, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, they were all massive Black Crow fans. Huge, massive. And we're at this house in Frankton, and someone had a Black Crowes DVD of just Black Crowes just relaxed in a environment in their house, talking about their influences and quite drunk. And I remember, never forget this, 25 years ago, watching it, and they said that Exile on Main Street was huge for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Huge. I didn't hear them mention anything about Faces or anything, but I remember them saying that they got a little bit annoyed about being compared to the Stones all the time, but they admitted that they just loved the Stones.
Yeah.
And they pulled it off. But I mean, Keith's influence is just AC/DC, Black Crowes, Nils Lofgren, Keith Don't Go, obviously the Faces. The list goes on.
Yes.
What's his name? Van Zandt from Bruce Springsteen's band.
Andrew Walton.
Yeah, the guy from what's his name? What's that show that I've never seen but everyone says it's good? That Mafia TV series.
The Sopranos.
Sopranos, yeah, he's on that show. He said, and I've mentioned this on the show before, all the American kids, the Italians, the Irish, the young Jewish kids in New York, when the Beatles were going nuts and Ed Sullivan was like huge, and 14-year-olds were plastered to their screen, glued to their TV screens. And the Beatles came out, all the kids were blown away. They were like, wow, this is amazing. How are they doing this? We can't do this, but I love it. And when the Stones came out 6 months later, they said, this is equally amazing, but I think we can probably do this.
Correct.
They could see the simple three chords, that song, All My Loving, and John Lennon's doing all that rhythm up and down the neck. I mean, I'm not even going to try and attempt to play that.
Mate, that just blows me away. That just blows me away that they can, that, you know, that these, that's one of the hardest songs ever to play. And they pulled it off.
Yeah. So that was just
singing as well.
Yeah. And that just shows you just the influence they had on all those kids and all those American bands coming out. And it would have been exciting to be in the Rolling Stones. And Keith and Mick, they held their heads quite well as far as they didn't get too up themselves and didn't let the fame go to their head. So, which leads me into the last chapter. We won't talk about that now, but obviously Keith's heroin addiction. But yeah, 69 tour, 72 tour, and continuing with that very good acoustic guitar playing, and obviously Keith's influences, Graham Parsons and Ry Cooder and various people. Wild Horses, Dead Flowers, Sister Morphine, Sweet Virginia, Sweet Black Angel.
Oh.
Just all on acoustic, all stripped down, all raw. Keith's really, like you mentioned, the hammer-ons, hammer-offs, lets the chords ring out. He's a masterful acoustic guitar player.
Capoing, using capos as well to get a different tuning, you know, so where it could still use that G, C, and D shape. You know, Let It Bleed is capoed on I think on the 3rd fret, you know, to give that little bit of a different sound. What's the other one? That Robert Johnson song that they do.
Love and Vain.
Love and Vain, you know, that's capoed as well. So, you know, he's a master of the capo, and, you know, realised that country guys were doing that as well. You know, the country guys especially were using the capo so that you could use the same chords, you know, and just get a tonal variation.
Yeah, I was watching the live version of
Hey, Nelson.
You Got the Silver, and it's just the 3 basic chords, but capoed at a 3rd fret, and just Keith's amazing timing. The song sounds amazing and interesting. And it's
correct.
If you were a scholar, you'd be like, this is just 3 basic chords.
Yeah.
But the right capoed at the right fret, the right timing. I mean, even the start of You Can't Always Get What You Want, it's just 2 chords. Is it G and F or C and F? It's all about feel.
You got it.
And maybe you can explain this better than me. With Wild Horses, what's the Nashville tuning?
As far as I understand, oh,
It's like
isn't that
tuned.
open? Isn't that just the open G?
No, it's a bit of a different twist. It's tuned to like a banjo or it's some
Oh,
kind of special tuning, Nashville tuning. Keith talks about it, where I think they tune three strings and leave the other three normal or something.
let me
Some,
Google it.
yeah. Nashville tuning is which makes obviously Wild Horses, and I think it's on a 12-string acoustic. So
Right, so national tuning is a guitar tuning where the lowest four strings are tuned up an octave while the top two strings remain at standard pitch. This creates a jangly, high pitched sound similar to a 12-string guitar, and the resulting chords are often layered with standard guitar track for a fuller sound. Okay, well, who said you don't learn things off this channel?
well, I mean, we've talked about open tunings and capos and standard tunings, but I mean, Keith's brilliance again, and who he got that off, I don't know. I've got a sneaky feeling it's probably Graham Parsons, but adding Nashville tuning to the mix, because we've seen Guns N' Roses do Wild Horses, and you can play it B minor G, but not quite the same as the Stones. So, yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. That they were on top of the world, 68 to 72. Just 4 years of brilliance.
What one thing I want to sort of talk to you about in preparation for the Keith show that I did over the week, and it was like a bit of an epiphany for me, and I've had an opportunity to listen to the albums that I'm talking about in a connection. So I just realized after we did last week's show that Beggar's Banquet and Let It Bleed are basically the same album, though they're basically recorded one after the other. It's the same mindset. It was the same. There was no dichotomy between the two albums. They were seamless. They dovetailed together. Admittedly, Brian wasn't there, and you had elements of Mick Taylor coming in, but those albums are basically dovetailed together. And I thought, oh, okay. So I listened to those two albums one after the other, and they are just like Sticky Fingers and Exile on Main Street have a connection.
Yeah.
So there's more of a connection between Beggar's Banquet and Let It Bleed than Let It Bleed and Sticky Fingers. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Now that I think about it, because you can't always get what you want at the Rock and Roll Circus, which was '68. That song we talked about, You Got the Silver, the first version had Mick Jagger singing it.
Yes.
So they would have had. I'm thinking about buying a book called The Beggar's Banquet Sessions. They would have had a lot of loose tracks, and when Mick Taylor came in with Let It Bleed, all his job was to do was overdub a couple of solos or a rhythm part. Most of it was done.
And he would have loved that, being the virtuoso guitar player that he was. Would have been easy. Listen to these tracks, record a solo.
Yep. So they have a similar sound as far as raw, really well produced. Jimmy Miller we talked about, and Glyn Johns, and just they're classics. They don't age. They're timeless. They sound as relevant today as they did 50 years ago. And there's bands tonight doing cover versions of those songs somewhere in the world. So that, like I said before, Keith Richards laid the framework for a rock and roll song.
Yeah.
Um, it didn't have to be technical or pretty. Led Zeppelin is a totally different type of band. They're in another world. I mean, Jimmy Page is a genius, a master, a wizard. Did you see that Arms video of that? And they did Stairway to Heaven, and Jimmy Page was trying to show Keith Richards the chords live on stage, and Keith just got lost.
Yeah.
When Jimmy Page had the black tally and he had the heroin thing going on, and it must have been, I don't know what show it was, but obviously there was a lot of guest artists, and Ronnie Lane fundraiser, wasn't it? The Arms concert.
That's it.
And I remember reading about Keith said, "Oh man," he said, "I'm just a 3-chord kind of a guy. That's Stairway to Heaven. That's 7 chords and D diminished minors with a third present A above a minor, Epstein minors. You know, just too technical." But I mean, yeah, Jimmy Page. That's another story with his tunings and Kashmir and all sorts. They're just clever guys. But if you think about it, you just can't play 3-chord standard tuning and think you're going to have a 50, 60-year career. You've got to mix it up. You know. So what was the whole idea? The whole idea for slide guitar from the Black Guys was to emulate Hawaiian pedal steel, wasn't it? Something along those lines happened.
Well, correct. And if you watch the film, it might get loud in here, and it starts off with them building a what do they call it? Oh gosh, I've got brain fade. Where they grab the wire and they just nail it to the house, and they just and grab a nail and they nail it, and they start just plucking the wire, the fencing wire.
Wow.
So and they just use the bit of steel, you know, instead of the finger. They use the bit of steel or you know, a garden or a tool to sort of get the tonal variation that you would get on a string. So you know, there's a good a diddly bow, that's it. They make a diddly bow, and there's a good argument to say, well, actually, that's where it came from, more than the Hawaiian sound, if that makes sense.
Oh, okay, yeah, because it would have been like a lot of things, with poverty, just playing out of just bare minimum, what was around. Because a lot of the white country bands, and we saw that with the Ray Charles movie, as they were fortunate to afford a proper pedal steel guitar, which was the hallmark of the country sound, that CG D intro with the, you know, just amazing. So we saw Ron Wood do it with Faraway Eyes, but yeah, we saw a lot of ground being covered with Keith, and just we started out with the Chuck Berry, and then he started getting a bit more confident with his acoustic, and then the pendulum shifted with the open tunings.
Well, that's right. It took them from, you know, from being on the horizon to the stratosphere, didn't it? You know, and it just gave them a lot of confidence, and, you know, put them in a position where they just weren't sounding like anybody else, Carl.
Incredible. And kudos to them for being humble. They would never, ever, after they open tuning and those big monster songs, they were the main act forever. There was no more support acts. They weren't supporting it on ours. They were the headline show. You know, the Stones are in town, you know, American tour. Just everybody's hanging out. Jimi Hendrix backstage, Ike Turner backstage, but B.B. King opening up. You know, how humbling is that?
Yeah, you know, as much as you know, 72 and 75 were important tours for the Stones. You know, I think from a personal achievement point of view too, I think Keith Richards would have been absolutely blown away with the reception that he and the Stones got in '81. You know, when they were just selling out night after night stadiums, Carl. It was just, you know, hundreds of thousands of people.
Those American football stadiums are just colossal. I see pictures and I'm like, you know, and yeah, just the size of the country and the magnitude. I mean, I think that was their last great tour, that in '82.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Steel Wheels is good, and Flashpoint and Voodoo Lounge and all that stuff, but they were just formulated after that. It was routine. It was put on a good show, but we've got such a massive database of songs. You know, we don't really have to try. You know, but yeah, that's the last period. Talk about '73 to '82. So a big change happened in Goat's Head Soup. The sessions were drawn out longer.
Yep.
Mick Taylor was starting to feel a little bit maybe isolated. Keith, yeah, the heroin sort of kicked in, and still some great songs, but that period of invincibility sort of some cracks started to appear, you know. Yeah, I mean, I like Goat's Head Soup and It's Only Rock and Roll, but yeah, you could hear that it was a strange feeling. You could hear that it was just like you mentioned, the flow of tracks, some good ones and not so good, and a really great one and a dud. So still monster albums, but just that glory period had stopped, and unfortunately, and this is a good thing, is Keith's a survivor. I mean, I think he would have dabbled with heroin in '68. He definitely looked like he was on heroin at that Hyde Park concert. I mean, he was so gaunt. But I think it reared its ugly head big time, probably '72 onwards.
Yeah.
Where it was probably a daily, instead of dabbling and like Red Hot Chili Peppers just having a taste. A lot of those jazz guys have a taste. It's probably a daily thing.
Well, I just watched that Stones in Exile again in the weekend, and you know there were days where no one saw Keith. You know, when they were 7 months in the south of France, there were days where you know he wouldn't come down from his bedroom. You know, so yeah.
And respect to Mick Jagger for, you know, keeping the ship afloat with being of sound mind. Because one great thing about Mick is Keith's got a couple of chords, but Mick can just write a whole song start to finish like it's nothing.
I also think what we need to do is give credit to Mick Jagger for that period as well, because he put the pressure on Keith to get rid of Graham Parsons, because that was another influence on him taking drugs, you know. So you know, and the only person that was ever going to talk to Keith about changing any kind of aspect of his life to continue the survival of the Rolling Stones, in my opinion, was always going to be Mick Jagger. You know, so you know, you know, a lot of people say that Mick put pressure on him to get rid of Parsons because he was feeling jealous. You know, it had nothing to do with jealousy. It had everything to do with Keith surviving and getting away from a guy that, you know.
Because Graham hung around with Graham was an okay guy, but he had a bit of a chip on his shoulder. He hung around with a bad crowd, didn't he?
Yeah, you know, and him and Keith were using together.
And Graham was a rich kid, wasn't he? He was.
Money wasn't a problem. Money wasn't a problem.
When you got those rich kids, and you got someone like Keith, who's like got natural charisma and a natural pirate, that they vicariously live through each other, if that makes any sense. Like Keith saw Graham as like, this is my gateway to What's that style of music? Country rock. What's that style that the Byrds and the Burrito Brothers did? I forgot what this is a certain style.
Well, it was called country music back then. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, um,
Now they call it Americana.
yeah. Ryan Adams and that, and then Graham would have thought, "Wow, I've got this ticket to Rockstar Coolden
Yep.
with the Stones and the tours and the groupies and I've got a good band, the Flying Burrito Brothers and what was that other band he was with? The Rodeo Sweethearts of the Rodeo. Um,
The Byrds.
got it. The Byrds, yes, the Byrds started it, and then the Flying Burritos were later.
Yep.
But imagine it'd be great to hang out with your buddies from America in a small band, but hanging out with the Stones, wow. But Graham Parsons had a horrible death, didn't he? I read up about it. I won't repeat it, but not very nice ending.
No.
Found in the desert and all sorts. So, but you're right, Mick. Keith always calls Mick his wife, but Mick has that responsible nature. A front man. I was good at economics. I'm good with numbers. And kudos to him because
I'm good with the girls.
yeah. I got the connections. I mean, Keith's obviously got the look, but Mick's. I mean, you're nothing without the front man. I mean, Ron Wood's replaceable. Maybe Bill Wyman, but those other guys not so much.
No.
Not so much. That's what I was. So that was it was an interesting period. So Goat's Head. It's only rock and roll, black and blue. But the great thing about that period is they started to explore funk, reggae, disco, and then later on a bit of punk.
Yes.
So like we said before, no matter what they threw at the Stones threw it right back, and most of the time to a good result.
Well, here's a photo of Keith. This is from the '81 tour. Oh no, this is from '78. Sorry, this is from '78.
Okay.
And he's playing the Telecaster Custom there. So these black Telecasters that he was playing, they were all in standard tuning. They weren't open G.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. All the black. But just you're right though. Reggae gave him just gave him another musical catapult to sort of jump off onto, didn't it? Or trampoline, I should say.
There's those famous pictures of him hanging out with all the Rusters, and he's super skinny, and he's the only white guy, and there's all these black Rasta men, and he looks like just one of the family, like an adopted child. He's got little dreadlocks and his marijuana necklace. And you see Ron Wood with that picture of that little reggae kid. That's a neat T-shirt. It's a great T-shirt. But yeah, I mean, Eric Clapton said it was like a kid in a candy store with reggae music, and obviously J.J. Cale. But
and in '78 he was playing guitars. His guitar strap was and the reggae colours of red, yellow, and green. So
yeah, saw that.
Yeah. So he embraced it, brother. He embraced it.
Well, Goat's Head Soup was recorded in Jamaica, wasn't it?
Correct.
So that would have been a big influence on them. I mean, because obviously Keith's the sort of guy, especially Mick, to walk around and see the nightlife and friendly guys and humble and not starstruck at all. And so great pictures of Mick with Bob Marley and Peter Tosh. And Peter Tosh signed to the Stones for a couple of albums.
Correct.
So there was a really great harmony there. And within that funny period, Black and Blue is probably one of their best sleeper albums, I think.
Well, they've just re-released it, haven't they, this week, Black and Blue. So I agree with you. I don't think that album gets enough love. I agree with you, Carl. It's definitely a sleeper album.
So,
I've been,
Goat's Head, again, a bit murky. It's Only Rock and Roll was a bit not overproduced, but a bit slick, where Black and Blue was just had a nice calming effect. The Billy Preston melody. One of my favourite deep cuts of all time has to be Memory Motel. Just a great song. A Fool to Cry is great, but Keith said that he tried to play it live and he fell asleep. Never missed a gig. He did fall asleep at a gig. I guess Heroin and Fool to Cry tempo is not a good mix. But I was also going to mention to all those guitar enthusiasts out there is it became that during that period, his main axe was the Tele, like you showed us.
Yeah.
And there's a great clip of Jeff Beck said, you know what, I love the Gibson Les Paul. It's just got a crunchy, powerful tone. But when I discovered and started playing the Strat, I was getting noises and sounds that I couldn't get before. So it just came to an end.
Yeah, you got it.
So I'm a Gibson guy. I love that Blues Breaker and the Cream, and I love the Mick Taylor's soaring solos, and I like Slash and all that sort of stuff. But I can understand these virtuosos, your Jeff Becks and your Eric Claptons and your John Frusciante's, just getting so much, especially Jimi Hendrix, just enjoyment out of the whammy bar and the 5 pickup switch, and Stevie Ray Vaughan's with the different knob controls. Because with the Gibson, the control is up the top. It's a bit more awkward. Where you watch Stevie Ray Vaughan, his right hand is like a equalizer. What are those things in the studio? Those
a fader.
Yeah, well, on the mixing desk they do the up and down.
Yeah.
With the,
yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, but that's what a Strat can do. So. So moving along to Drug Problems, Main Axe, Tele, Black and Blue, and then so with Some Girls and that famous that famous drug bust in Toronto.
Yep.
Some Girls, he was in and out of rehab, was he? Or
yeah, as I understand it.
Okay, so he was finally clean properly with the judge order saying, listen, this is your last chance. Yes. 81 tour was finally said, you know what, I can't do this anymore.
Well, it became apparent to him that it could all end. Now, we all know that the Stones were the number one priority in Keith's life. But then he got to a stage where you realise, my gosh, this could be all taken away from me because of something I'm doing.
Well, and he's probably had a bit of guilt, because here's you and I peddling drugs or using drugs on the street. We get caught with a small amount, 6 months jail. Rock star, whole lot of stuff. Good lawyer, a judge who probably feels a bit, probably a bit starstruck. He probably realises I can't play this game longer because they'll be playing the Mickey. They'll be taking the Mickey out of me. If I get busted again, a lawyer's going to say, we can't save you now. You've already been busted twice, 3 times. I mean,
correct.
You're going to make it stupid.
Yep.
So that Barbarian concert and the charity concert and Waddy Wachtel and the guys was his last chance, wasn't it?
Yep.
And that blind angel that wrote a letter, that was a super fan, that would go to the shows blind and just loved the music, and that was who he described as his guardian angel.
Correct.
So yeah, I'm just so glad for him. I mean, obviously, he said he's tried everything. The Auckland Herald said the only 2 things Keith hasn't tried is glue and what's that stuff? Roundup. Yeah, the only 2 things he hasn't. Everything else he's tried. But Keith's favourite was the heroin. That was his favourite.
Is it? Yeah, he even tried pulling out of trees.
Wow. Yeah, well, he's a survivor, right? That heroin would have suited him because he's naturally reclusive, loves his acoustic. He's not all about going around town like Mick Jagger in Studio 54.
No.
And he didn't like the fame, and we saw how awkward he was with the interviews in the early 60s. So it would have been a match made in heaven, but as we know with drugs, it starts out as a lot of fun, but it really doesn't end well for a lot of people.
Or even awkward in the early 70s too. You know, there's that famous black and white interview where he's been interviewed by Australian TV, you know, and he's, you know,
Yes.
trying to be honest. It's an incredible bit of footage, but you can see the guy's very, you know, he's very reticent about sort of talking about himself and his music, you know. So, and it's not an act.
No. And he got a bit emotional talking about Brian Jones, saying, you know, he mentioned there's certain people you meet in your life, they're not going to make it to 30, and he was one of them.
Yeah, and he knew, but in that same interview, he knew that he wouldn't.
Yeah, you can see the bit of pain, a little bit of pain in his voice, because he himself was extremely high during that interview. And it's like, what do? You're addicted to this stuff. It makes you feel good. There's that famous saying that I think Gimme Shelter was written on a speedball, you know, heroin and cocaine laced.
Do you know why I think he was like that during that interview? I think it's because Mick and Keith asked Brian to straighten out.
Yeah.
I,
And a good
yeah.
Sorry. A good point. I read about this about a week ago, and in the 60s, especially the mid 60s, late 60s, we have it's prevalent now, rehabs and Betty Fords and halfway houses and recovery systems and medication and withdrawals. There wasn't much information in the 60s about, you know, drug use. In the mid 60s, it was actually encouraged to try it as an experiment in prisons, and the army, and methamphetamine, and kamikaze bombers, and James Whitey Bulger trying acid in prison for commissary and time off sentence. But it wasn't until the late 60s, and they had the 27 Club, like, this is a problem.
Yeah.
5 or 6 dollars in a year.
So we want to make it quite clear, folks, that Keith didn't go to Switzerland and have blood transfusions. That didn't happen.
Well,
great urban myth, though, isn't it?
Well,
I believed it when I was a young guy. I believed it.
Well, the reporter said, "Okay, Keith, so you want us to not believe that and believe your story that you go there to go skiing? What's more believable, a blood transfusion with your money and your contacts, or you're going skiing?" So I've never seen a picture of skiing as well. But
I believed it though for a couple of years.
But stuff was getting messy though, because half his house burnt down, guitars were getting stolen. One of his children died. He broke messy relationship with his wife Anita, and someone got shot in the house. And you know, it was getting dark.
Up and down relationships with his children, with his kids as they grew up to become adults as well. You know.
It's quite funny. Keith had a rule. You know, you can do drugs, just don't let it get too out of control. But we have no tolerance for. In those days, they called it freebasing. These days, we call it crack cocaine.
Yeah.
He punched Ronnie in '81, either in the hotel room or on stage, because he was freebasing, wasn't he? And he just saw, and a lot of drug users will do drugs like coke, or they'll pop a pill or something, even heroin, but they'll draw the line at a glass pipe.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but that's just the lowest of the low, I think. That just, yeah. So, but that's enough drug talk. But I'm glad that Keith confronted his demons and is living. Like we said at the start of the show, he's the last man standing.
Well, yeah, and he's 80 years old. The guy's just a complete legend, and the issues he's had, have taken some toll, but obviously not quite a lot, Carl, because the guy's still fit, lucid, artistic.
I saw him on that great snippet on the Howard Stern show. They're talking about.
Thanks, Nelson.
Yeah. And this is probably 3-4 years ago. And Howard Stern is in awe. He's a big Beatles fan, and he loves the Stones. And there's a celebrity site called TMZ, and they chase celebrities around. The ambulance chases, paparazzi. But when Mick Jagger's in town, it's a totally different type of celebrity. That's the level these guys are at. You got your Hollywood actors and your all your Kardashians and all this riffraff and superficial. But I mean, Mick Jagger's it's a totally different level. Keith Richards. I mean, Howard Stern's just in awe.
I know. And Howard Stern has, for a long, long time interviewed everybody, didn't he? Everybody. Yeah. And that's a great interview, because if folks haven't seen it, it's really, really interesting, because Howard Stern plays all the songs that Keith and Mick wrote for other people. And there's 25 songs, basically, that they play.
Wow.
And Keith is humble as heck, going, we were just practicing on those ones.
Well, that's the other thing about Keith is incredible dry sense of humour. Must be just the English side of him or something, or not taking life too seriously. But that's why the Stones are so relatable, I think, is because there's no, the Aerosmiths and the Motley Crues are just so, what's the word? They're just out of this world. They're so over the top that when you take away all the makeup and glitz and glam, what do you got? With the Stones, there was no makeup to begin with. There was, it was just rough and ready.
I think one of the reasons why they were so relatable is because they were aspirational. They came from working class families, a lot of them, generally speaking, and realised for them to achieve anything, you have to get out and work, Carl. And it's a great example, of applying yourself to something, and that's always going to be intriguing, and you're going to, because you've done that, you're going to be relatable to a lot of people because you've picked up so many life skills in that journey of success. Yeah. I mean, the stories they could tell, and I'm actually reconsidering buying a few more Rolling Stone books. There's a great photographer, Gerald Manowitz or someone, and it's just called Stones at Home. It's 66, and they're just Redlands and little flats in London, and just everyday people. But they've just got a gift, and I just love them. Just really, really like them. What have I put down here? A reference for great rock songs, rhythm, style, attitude, and he's his own man. Right.
He's his own man.
Well, I'm just looking at the time now, mate. We're going to wind up the show. Next week's going to be our last Stones show. We're going to get together. So I'm going to ask Carl to come on, and I want you to pick 5 songs, Carl, in the career of the Rolling Stones. You've got 5 songs to pick. We're going to spend some time together, and I want you to tell me why you've picked these 5 songs. 5 of your favourite Stones songs.
Originals or covers?
It can be anything you want, anything that the Stones have done. It could be Little Red Rooster, as an example. You're quite welcome to pick but 5 Stones songs, and we'll get together, and obviously I'll have 5, so you can go for 1, I'll go for 1, and then I'll be interested to see what you've picked and the reason why you've picked those songs.
Yeah. No, that's going to be quite hard because
I know.
50 albums and 500 songs. Yeah. What do they do on YouTube and that? They do. They say 5 songs, and yes, that's the word honourable mentions. They'll let you sneak in 1 or 2.
Okay, well, you've got a couple of honourable mentions then. I'll give you a couple of honourable mentions. You can sneak a couple of...
That'll help.
Yeah. But, I'll look forward to that. So what does Keith mean for you personally? Like, we've just spent an hour and a half talking about Keith's life, objectively, obviously. But I'd like to know what Keith Richards means to you, Carl, Van Wilson-Vos today. What did he mean for you growing up, and where do you situate the guy?
Well, I see the Stones as 2 things. I see them all as individuals, and then I see them obviously like Keith's vision, which is a family, which is what they are. But Keith, as a musician, is someone that's for me one of my biggest heroes, because he never forgot where he came from, and he put on a lot of blues artists, and it'd be quite difficult to try open tunings and different slide, because you don't know how it's going to work out, but it worked out great. So when we see Keith Richards and we see him, with Jerry Lee Lewis or live with Jimmy Kimmel, just the respect and the adulation for these guys, especially Keith, worldwide in every country, is a testimony to his character. And I think with Keith, what sums it up for me with Keith, and that's why I'm enjoying playing the guitar now, because my dad's a bit sick. He said, Carl, whatever you do, don't stop playing the guitar. And I just like how simple he is. Simple, but not simple as in simpleton, but simple as in just, it gives us all hope, and we focus on feel. So he's just, you chuck 3 ingredients at him: tomatoes, olive oil, some fresh garlic, and all of a sudden you've got a great meal. It doesn't take much. So for me, he embodies to me just someone, a musician's musician, someone that genuinely loves what he does and cares for his family, his bandmates, and his influences. I guess the greatest testimony would be that 60th or 50th birthday party of Chuck Berry, because Keith organised the whole thing, didn't he?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you've got Eric Clapton and Julian Lennon and Etta James and the rhythm section from NRBQ, and you've got a whole host of guys, and just that's just Keith. No ego, just let's just focus on the music and have a good time. And Chuck on that exterior tough surface, deep down, loves him like a son. I thought.
Yeah. For me,
that's what is just.
I remember watching the Start Me Up video in '81 when that came out, thinking, who is this guy? I knew a little bit about him, but back then I was a Beatles nut. I was deep, knee deep up here. I was up to my eyeballs and the Beatles, and I was lucky because I had Rolling Stones records too at my uncle's place that I could tap into. But Keith was always this dark figure, this guy that was always like the gunslinger in the back of my mind. He was always this tough guy that you would never muck around with, and I think this is one of the reasons why I like him so much today, because he's a walking story. His life in the Rolling Stones is a story, and you and I were talking about this a couple of weeks ago. I for a long time I loved the Beatles, but now I love the Stones more, because the Stones continued. The Stones went through the 70s and the 80s, so they've just gathered all these stories, Carl, and these myths around them,
like
and
sailors at the ports.
yeah, exactly. And that's the power of the music as well. You know, yes, it is the songs, but it's everything else that goes with the song. The look, the artistic ability, the coolness. You know, we've spoken about this before. The influence that they've had on other people. You know, it's hard to deny Keith Richards not having any of that.
And once again, I mean, here's probably $50 million in the bank or assets, and you'd never know with Keith because he keeps writing great songs, and he just wears jeans and a t-shirt, and money's just not even an issue as far as it's, you know, he's just continuing to put out good product. I mean, a lot of guys would be a bit complacent, say, I've made it. What do I need to do? Anything else? But he's like a kid in a candy store. He's constantly looking for the next big thing. You know, you mentioned that blues cover album they did, which was good, and that Johnny Johnson album that he did with Chuck Berry's piano player.
Yeah. Well, I do look forward when they release their album. You know, we'll definitely jump on here and we'll talk about that. But Carl and I are going to be back next week, folks. We've given ourselves a difficult mission. We're going to pick 5 songs that are going to encapsulate the Rolling Stones for us at a deep and meaningful level. And we're going to allow ourselves a couple of honorable mentions as well. And we're going to tell you why we've picked these songs. And it could be for any reason, but it has to be a personal connection, obviously, to who we are as music fans and men. So, Carl, as ever, brother, I appreciate hanging out with you, and God bless you, and thank you for taking time out of your life, hanging out with us, and we'll touch base next week, brother.
Thanks. I'm just glad the webcam's working. So yeah, awesome.
Yeah. The rock and roll gods.
I went to PB Tech today because my car's back on the road, and I'm looking forward to getting a proper studio set up like yours. So
fantastic. All right, brother.
All right.
So we're going to cruise. We'll see you next week.
Sounds good.
Rock and roll.
Sounds like. Thanks, man. See you guys. Thanks everyone for supporting.